Hi, this is Alexandra with Beadaholique, and today I'm excited to show you how to make the Floraline necklace, bracelet, and earring set. You can see here I've created the Nightshade version, and in the video we're going to put together the Rustic version of the Floraline set. So for this bracelet, it uses some MiniDuos, Czech glass MiniDuos, some Checkmates 2-hole brick beads, Toho beads in Demi round shape in the sizes of 8 and 11/0, and I have some Swarovski pearls. And what we'll do first is just create the 7th unit of this little flower shape. So to begin weaving the flower, we're going to alternate 8 of the 8/0 Tohos with 8 of the Czech MiniDuos. Once I get them strung on, I'll bring the 2 ends of the thread around and tie my knot, and then weave the pearl into the center. Six, 7, and one more, 8. So it's a real simple flower weave rotation. After the pearl's in there, then we come up around the outside and weave on our 11/0s. Make sure I have a nice tight knot in here. I'll reinforce it. There we go. Trim my tail. Get my 4mm pearl. String it down into the middle, and then figure out where that halfway point is. The other side of the flower, I'm going to pull the thread around and double back through the bead. And just do that a couple times to make a nice secure setting. All right, bring that through, and now I'm ready to come up through the 2nd hole of my MiniDuo. And from here, I'm going to string on an 11/0, an 8/0, and another 11/0, and come through my next MiniDuo, 11/0, 8/0, and 11/0, and continue around the outside. Real simple. All right, I've got my last little section here to fill. My demi round beads. I'm going to come through that last MiniDuo, and now I'm ready to tie it off. Once. Oops. And twice. Just to be safe, I'm going to come through and do another knot for myself. All right, so the bracelet takes 7 of these, and once we've got them complete, then we're ready to connect by sewing the edges with the 11/0 demi rounds. So for that process, the way we begin is we're going to take a new section of FireLine of about 3 feet, and rethread our needle. we'll begin by creating one side of our clasp. So I'm going to take and start with this end by actually taking one of my brick beads through one hole of that, 2-hole bead, and come up, and I'll leave a tail of a couple of inches. And then I'm going to thread on 3 8/0 demi rounds, and then my 10mm pearl, an 11/0 Toho, and I'm going to double back through my pearl, through the 8/0s, and then I'm going to come through the other side of that brick bead, like so. And that secures my FireLine for adding on each of these in turn. And the way that's going to go is, starting on one side, I'm going to string on 1 8/0 demi round, 2 11/0 demi rounds, got an extra, and then I'm going to come through, and here's my entry point. I'm going to double underneath one of these sections of demi round beads that are coming around the outside of my flower. I'm going to string it on like so. And once I have that on, I'm coming around my first petal, and I want to fill that little space with 4 11/0s. Again, I'm going to double underneath, thread my needle through those 3 demi rounds that are in between the MiniDuos, and pull it tight. And again, thread on 4 11/0s. Underneath, back through those demi rounds. So I'm filling out my petals, and I'm going to do 3 of those. Once I've filled 3 sections, doubling through one more time. Now I'm ready to create my link to the next flower. And the way I'm going to do that is by threading on 2 11/0s after I've passed through my last section on the outside of my flower. 2 11/0s, and then an 8/0, and then a brick bead. Okay. This is what it's looking like. Now I'm going to do the mirror image of that on the other side by taking an 8/0, 2 11/0s, and now I'm ready to start into my next flower. So I'm going to come under those 3 demi rounds on the outside of my flower and begin again with 4 11/0s through my demi rounds, 4 more 11/0s, through my demi rounds, and my third section, like so. And now I'm ready to add my next flower, and I'm going to continue all the way along till I get to the end, and then we're going to create the other side of our clasp and weave back down the other side, and then we'll tie it off with the tail that we left right here. So I'll go ahead and add these on. Do one more here to show you. My brick bead, another 8/0, 2 more 11/0s, and entering at any point along these flowers, just as long as I'm at the edge of one of my sections of demi rounds. In I go, to begin my sections of 4 11-0s between each. So I'll go ahead and do this side, come all the way to the end, and we'll create our loop. So I've completed weaving half the bracelet, and I'm ready to create the second portion of my clasp before moving down the other side. So to do that, I'm going to, once I've come out my last section of demi rounds, I'm going to put on 2 more 11-0s, 1 more 8-0, and another brick bead, just as I was in between. This time, I'm going to create this loop portion by taking on 2 8-0s and then 8 11-0s, 7, 8, and then 13 of the 8-0s, 4, 6, 7, 8, 10, 11, 12, 13, and then 8 more of the 11-0s. And this is just enough beads to create the proper size loop for this 8mm bead. I wanted to clarify that that is an 8mm bead. I believe I misspoke and called it 10, but I checked with my millimeter gauge and it's 8. Let's see, 3, 6, 7, 8. All right, and once I've got those last 8 11-0s on, I'm going to double back through my 2 8-0 Tohos next to the 2-hole bead, and then once I've gotten through those, I'm doubling back through the second hole of my brick bead. I want to make sure it's all tight by checking and pulling down against what I've woven. Tighten up that loop, and once it's secure, then I'm ready to move back down the other side. So I'm going to do the same thing on the second side of that brick bead. Take on an 8-0, 2 11-0s, and begin moving back down the other side of my flower by threading right into the section of demi rounds on the other side of that first petal, the MiniDuo petal, and then begin with my 4 11-0s in between each section, just as I did before. So I'm going to move down all along this side. Let me get through the first flower so I can get into that section, and then we'll meet up at the end here. There we go. Couple design tips as I'm thinking of them. I always like to check both holes of my MiniDuos, or any 2-hole bead or multi-hole bead for that matter, just to make sure that they're open, because every once in a while there'll be a little piece of glass in there or the hole's not quite drilled through. And it's always a bummer to have to undo your weaving to take that into account. So just make sure your holes are open. All right, so I'm down, I've done 3 sections, and I'm ready to come into the second hole of my brick bead for the connection. I'm going to take on 2 11-0s and 1 8-0, come through that hole, and then do the mirror image of that with 1 8-0 and 2 11-0s, and begin into the second half of my blossom there by coming through my demi rounds. Oops, my thread got pulled around the side there. There we go. All right, so I'm going to continue all along the edge of this side of the bracelet and then meet up with you when I'm ready to tie it off. Finishing my last section of 4 beads into the demi rounds. Coming up now, and I'm ready to add my last couple of beads before tying off. So I've got 2 11/0s and 1 more 8/0. And I'm going to meet up my 2 ends here. Tie myself a double knot. Once. Twice. Now, for security, what I always like to do is actually double back up through the end portion of my clasp, just to reinforce that FireLine that gets so much use. So bring my needle up, double back through that little 11/0 at the end, and back through my bead. And I'm going to send my needle through the second hole of my brick bead and create a second little knot here. And that will be the bracelet. So the process is the exact same for the earring to make the flower. The only difference is going to be, oh, I've got one more tail here. Complete our bracelet. There we go. So the only difference for the earring is the portion where it comes up to attach onto the ear hook. And so I can demonstrate that for you, and that will also answer the question of how the necklace is done. Now the difference with the necklace is that there are a couple of extra mini duos to come around that more sizable bead in the center, but otherwise it's the same process of weaving and sewing the bead in the middle, coming up through the second hole of the mini duo and around the edge. So I'm gonna sew up the earring and then demonstrate the attachment. Okay, so as you see here, I've threaded on all of my little demi rounds around the edges, and I have my last 4 strung on. And at this point, what I'm going to do is double back through my section of 3, like I have before, to create my last covered petal. And at this point, I'm going to take 5 of my 11/0s onto my needle and 1 8/0. Creating the top attachment now, I'm going to double back over the 8/0 and through 4 of my 11/0s. 2, 3, 4. So I'm leaving 1 that's flat down out of the needle. And I'm also going to bring on 1 more. I've added on the last of my 11/0s, including this one little loose one. After I've double back through 4, I've added 1 on. I'm going to re-enter my needle again into my little section of 3, like I've been doing. And when I pull my thread tight, then the top portion's going to come straight off, and that will be how our earring hangs. So from here, I'm ready to tie off my thread between my 11/0s once and twice. Then I'm going to tuck it in, and clip. And I'll be ready to attach the ear wire. Get my thread snips. And just take my flat pliers, turn the loop off to the side, turn it back in, flush against itself, and there we have our little earring. So there's the Floraline sets. I've had such a good time making these. All these beads and project bundles are available at Beadaholique.com. Thanks for watching.